serious, therapists of Reddit, have you ever hated a client? Why? I don't think I've ever hated any of my clients, but I think I've definitely disliked working with a few. I have done quite a lot of work with sex offenders, and while I could do good work with many of them, there were some who were completely remorseless, and saw themselves as the real victims, for getting caught/imprisoned. We were still able to make progress together, but it was draining and punishing work. I've never met a patient whom I've hated. I have, however, met patients where our work together has been highly unpleasant. I hold no ill will toward them, but I do not look forward to seeing them. I work in a behavioral hospital. I have worked a lot with children who were abused by their parents and who otherwise live quite shitty home lives. I can't say I've ever really hated a client, but I have absolutely hated some of my clients' parents. I understood that the kids were acting the way they were because of their upbringing, and while some were directly hostile at me, I've been hit multiple times before. I haven't ever hated the kid for it. Now, have I been frustrated? Fuck yeah, better believe it. But hate? Nah. It's really common for people to wonder/worry that their therapist is judging them or dislikes them. However, it's part of our training and our professional code of ethics to practice non-judgmental positive regard. We also get ongoing supervision around challenging feelings that come up. Even private practitioners often maintain a connection to another therapist as a mentor for tough cases. Another thing to remember is that we hear a lot, and that the thing that is shocking or shameful to you is likely pretty common. We are proud that you feel ready to recognize problematic patterns of behavior and maybe even make some change. All that being said, threatening your therapist with physical or sexual violence or coming to sessions armed, intoxicated, or high can get you fired from therapy. We've all had that happen at least once, and it can be really scary. Kind of. Hate is a strong word. I've had a couple who had narcissistic behaviors and refused to see the way they were hurting everyone around them. Reminded me of my mom, so that made it so much harder to try and work with them. Would not acknowledge their own mental/emotional pain, hurt others, and then complained they were lonely. 16,000 plus hours in the field. The absolute worst clients you can have are people that are forced to do it by someone else. It's a very weird dynamic where they will talk about certain things openly and then blatantly lie about things they think I'm going to tell their spouse/partner/parent/ally. As I look into their eyes and ask a question, I already know the answer to, and they blatantly lie to me. It's infuriating sometimes. Client with substance use disorder, sitting across from me, obviously high on opiates, and I ask questions regarding triggers or cravings and they just lie that everything is alright and they feel great. I can see the pain in their eyes. I had it once. Also, Jack, you're an entitled ass. Please leave your family alone. Not really hated. Those with narcissistic personality disorder who think they can manipulate you and are clearly harming others are frustrating to work with. I work with kids now and I do hate some parents. The ones who reject their LGBTQ kids. The ones who have flat out told their kids they hate them and they never wanted them. My least favorite are the parents in a custody dispute who think they can feed lines to their kids to repeat in sessions about how awful the other parent is in order to try and obtain the case notes for the custody hearing later on. The community mental health system is under enough strain. We don't need those cases tying up our caseloads and being used as a tool in family conflict. I still like the kids in those scenarios, but it's sad to see how manipulative the parents are. Don't get me wrong. There are appropriate files where a kid is struggling with the separation. I'm talking about a few I've had where it's clear one parent is feeding a kid lines to say about their other parent to say in session. It's pretty obvious when you see it and it's frustrating. I hate parents that put their kids in the middle of that. Hate as in I would be happy to hear that she died in a car fire, screaming as her flesh melted? No. But I did have one client that I very strongly disliked. Nobody at the clinic couldn't stand her. She had both borderline and narcissistic personality disorder. She had a terrible temper, and just simply treated everybody in her life like absolute shit. She was an enhanced Karen. I've never met anyone who had such vile, seething hatred for literally everyone she had met. All it took is for a person to displease her once, and she wanted them torn limb from limb and their houses burned with their families inside. She would call me almost every day even if I wasn't at work, then bomb me with text messages that got progressively angrier and more abusive because I refused to answer my work number for anyone when I wasn't on duty. She would accuse me of neglect and malpractice, and would threaten to report me. She of course complained to my supervisor who, to this day, is one of the best supervisors I've ever had. My supervisor politely and in clinical terms told A that contacting me outside clinical hours was a boundary violation, that she had other options for mental health crises when her primary clinician was unavailable, of which she had been made clearly aware, and that if she didn't like those options she could go fuck herself. A also would demand to change her appointment times every single week, usually only about an hour before they were to begin. If I was unavailable at the new time, She would bomb my phone, and then when I didn't answer, she'd call the front desk and demand that they reschedule whoever I was seeing at the time that she wanted to switch her appointment to, often threatening to report us for neglect if we refused. She had sought services and dragged her unwilling boyfriend along for couples counseling. Really what she wanted was for me to yell at him and tell him to do everything she demanded of him. Now, he was no saint either. But he was a bit more normal than her, and his anger was mostly directed at A and her equally horrible mother rather than everybody like A's anger and hatred. They would both just argue and fight the entire time. Neither would compromise on one single thing in their lives. She had wanted completely control of his life, when he woke up, when and what he did around the house, what he did for a job, what he did for fun, and she wanted him to have sex with her on demand. He decided to just not do anything. He would stay up half the night playing video games. He did help out a lot around their house, but he woke up on his own time, did chores on his own time, applied for jobs that he wanted to do, and refused to have sex with her because of how disrespectfully she treated him. His behavior was partially laziness and stubbornness on his part, but a huge part of it was out of spite and just being fed up with her. It was a train wreck, and neither wanted to leave, her out of fear of abandonment, and him because he simply didn't give a fuck about anything anymore. In our final session, she chewed me out for being ineffective and unqualified, and suggested that our clinic was violating state guidelines by allowing me, an MSW intern, to be their clinician instead of assigning them an LCSW or LPC. I explained that by working directly under an LCSW, we were completely within state and national guidelines. My credentials were made perfectly clear at the beginning of our work together, and they had the option to look elsewhere months ago if they hadn't wanted to work with an intern. All in all, I couldn't give less of a shit that she was dissatisfied with my work. I was just glad to be rid of her. Thanks for listening. Subscribe for more daily videos.